Let's bring in our guest, Chief John Nnia Nwodo, past President General Ohaneaze Ndi'Igbo. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this our word, the issue of restructuring. A lot of people actually believe that talking about restructuring is a call to balkanizing Nigeria. Why do you think that misunderstanding persists when it comes to the issue of restructuring the country? And former President Goodluck Jonathan has said restructuring alone is not enough to solve all of Nigeria's problems. Maybe you want to address both issues.
Well, fundamentally, we had a historical aberration. When we decided to become one country, the people of Nigeria had conferences in Kaduna, in Ibadan, in Enugu, and ultimately in Lagos. And between 1959 and 1963, we evolved a constitution agreeable to all parts of Nigeria to form a federation called the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with independent regions which had exclusive legislation for their domestic issues of security, which controlled 50% of all mineral resources in their respective areas, which had agent generals in United Kingdom and representatives in other countries of the world. Now, that agreement of Nigerians was overthrown by a January 1966 coup and subsequent coups that happened in Nigeria. So from January 1966 until today, the people of Nigeria have not really written their own constitution. When we had the first military coup, they amended the constitution copiously and ran a unitary system of government, different from the federal system of government that we ran. Now, Obasanjo ended the first phase of military administration and wrote a presidential constitution. He gave us a presidential constitution before he retired, and Shehu Shagari came on board with the presidential constitution that he had. Shehu Shagari was overthrown in the first year of his second tenure. That ushered in another era of military administration, which ended with General Abdulsalami Abubakar. General Abdulsalami Abubakar appointed the Nikki Toby committee, which went around Nigeria and submitted a report to 24-member Supreme Military Council, which was not chosen without any reference to equality of geographical area, and which did not subject their adumbration to any plebiscite or vote by the people of Nigeria or their representatives. So in law, what we have today as the 1999 Constitution does not have validity. It is what you say in law, it's not a touchstone us. In other words, it was not written by representatives of the people, it was not subjected to a plebiscite, it was not subjected to a referendum or a vote of any kind. It is the wish of 24 senior army officers, chosen on the basis of their rank rather than representation of the component parts of Nigeria. So the capacity of the Constitution to have loyalty of Nigerians is in serious jeopardy.
So when you look at this, the thought in my head is we the people did not do the current constitution. That
and ironically, it starts with that sentence.
We the people.
Yes.
So if it does not represent we the people, what happened to the Constitutional Review Committee that was put together by President Jonathan himself some years ago?
Well, unfortunately, they had very good conclusions, and they were derived from all the ethnic nationalities in the country.
Yes.
And for the first time, such an assemblage of Nigerians of different persuasions, ideologically and culturally, came to agreed conclusions. They reached a conclusion on every issue before them, even without a vote. They managed to tinker an agreement. Unfortunately, that conclusion was never ratified into law before Jonathan left office. And ironically, the present federal government of the APC had in its manifesto the restructuring of the federation. And even after the president won election, the national executive of his party appointed a committee headed by the governor of Kaduna State, which presented a report highlighting several aspects of restructuring that it recommended to its national executive, which approved it. But sadly, the president came back to a press conference and said that our problem was not structure, but process. Whatever that means, I do not understand. But what it means clearly is that the APC has abdicated its manifesto at a time Nigerians think it is critical, and it is the basis on which Nigerians voted for them. And I wish they could take a second look at it.
Now that there's a big question mark on the 1999 Constitution, some have even said that Constitution should be discarded because it does not reflect the wishes of Nigerians. But what then would be the way forward? Now that that call for restructuring is being renewed, the calls are getting louder and louder. If we're to start restructuring, where do we start from? And what do we even mean? What kind of restructuring are we talking about for Nigeria?
Basically, what it entails to restructure Nigeria is devolution of powers. This federal government is loaded with too much powers, that it has become monolithic and difficult to superintend. And for that reason, our country is collapsing by the day. We are the 6th largest producer of crude oil in the world, and yet we cannot produce our own petrol. We have to import petrol. Our refineries have collapsed. Our consumption of imported petrol is far from the petrol we consume in Nigeria, because a lot of it is freighted out of our borders. Yeah. The checks and mechanisms have collapsed because the component units which should help to localize some of the administration have been dispossessed of their constitutional prerogatives, and we have an amorphous federal government. Look, the first oil well in Nigeria was in Iloibiri, in what is now Bayelsa State. My father was Minister of Commerce and Industry in Eastern Nigeria, who supervised the opening of the rig. It was an Eastern Nigerian concern. Its responsibility was to give royalty of 50% to federal government and to retain 50%. This kind of thing doesn't exist anymore. The federal government has complete monopoly of all mineral resources in Nigeria. And that's not right.
All right, so let's quickly then, when there is a mention of 1979 Constitution, it also says we the people, and there is a Constituent Assembly that was put together. Is that valid? Very quickly.
You see, you can put a Constituent Assembly, but whatever its conclusions must be referred to the people to affirm that we accept in a plebiscite.
Okay, we know that we have to take that as your final answer, but we can't let you go without asking, what are the Ndi'Igbos doing with regards 2023? Are you going around letting Nigerians know that Ndi'Igbo have a right, a constitutional right, to be able to fight for the position of presidency? It's not a case of zoning. It's a case of we've got to find a way to get Ndi'Igbo to be able to get representation at the highest office in Nigeria. Is that something we can get a very short, quick
answer?
Yes,
if you ask me.
Yes, sir.
As an Igbo man, I would prefer a restructured Nigeria to the issue of a donation of presidency. Because if you restructure Nigeria, it gives every component part of Nigeria a capacity to develop at its own pace. And there'll be competition among the regions. It's happened before, and we came up tops. Now, but the truth of the matter is that the long history of Nigeria has shortchanged the Igbos, not just in the presidency, but in accessibility to positions of critical importance in Nigeria. No, not more than 2 Igbo people in the entire history of Nigeria have been Chief of Army Staff. An Igbo man who was only a ceremonial president at the time that the Prime Minister was the executive president. And an Igbo man has been Vice President, only for a short span that Vice President Alex Ekweme was there. There seemed to be a clear consensus of the rest of Nigeria to exclude Igbo from sensitive political and security positions in Nigeria.
Why is that?
It must be a punishment for the war. And look, my friend, the war ended in 1970 And that's about 50 years ago. And the Igbos that you're meting this punishment on today, many of them were not even born during the war. And if you look at the terrain of Nigeria, there is no non-Igbo man who has a school or a hospital or a major industry in southeast of Nigeria. But Igbos are invested in every part of Nigeria. There are 3-point-something million Igbos registered to vote in Lagos. There are 11.6 million Igbos in northern Nigeria. So Igbos are really the true Nigerians. They are the people who live outside their home and invest there. But they are the people marginalized from the hierarchy of the power.
Well, don't you think the idea of, coming from the position of a victim is further worsening the position of Ndi'Igbo? When Ndi'Igbo say we are being marginalized, instead of coming, from a position of strength and coming to a table and saying, look, this is what we think is going on. This is how we think the problem can be solved. Unfortunately,
because you are underestimating what we have been doing. I think there is nobody in Nigeria who does not realize that Ndi'Igbo have been changed. And I have had people from other parts of Nigeria saying, we must have a rethink. This is unfair to the Igbos. But you see, it is for the Igbo politicians in the various political parties to engage their Nigerian colleagues diplomatically and ensure that in zoning the offices in their various parties, careful regard is given for the long period of marginalization.
Is that engagement taking place now?
I believe so, from my interaction with the politicians that come from my area.
Because we had...
Those of us who are not in political parties have also reached out to non-politicians in these areas with a view to seeing that they influence their politicians.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Not enough time to explore all the issues before us. John Nnia Nwodo, thank you so much for joining us, former Minister of Information, of course, and former head of Ohaneaze Ndi'Igbo.